Our hero is a medic named Rackle, who has suffered severe losses due to a coronavirus. One fateful day, standing on a bridge, he accidentally falls and dies, after which he finds himself in another world. As it turned out, the hero was reborn in the world of the novel he had already read in his life. In addition, he was sick, so he had to perform a very complicated operation on himself. But that's not all. Let's go back to the beginning to find out the details of what's going on. The hero is looking at reviews on his phone. His clinic has failed because of the coronavirus. He is mired in debt and is standing near a bridge with a bottle of alcohol. He is very angry at people and doesn't understand why exactly his clinic got into this situation. He falls off a bridge, wondering why the sky is under his feet. He thinks about being a Korean doctor and ponders if something is about to happen. The system sends a notification that he is getting extra health for his internal organs and the XP system. He opens his eyes and doesn't realize where he is. There is an employee standing in front of him, some kind of strange man. He looks around and realizes that he is not in a hospital, but in some strange room with medieval furniture. He looks at this furniture, and the clerk starts to cry. The hero doesn't recognize him, which makes him even more upset. He introduces himself as Garden, his personal physician. The hero asks for some water. He drinks and realizes that the glass he is drinking from is completely cut with 23 full diamonds. The hero looks in the mirror and realizes that it is not his body. He chokes on the water and realizes that it is not his face, and apparently he has entered someone else's body. He remembers the name Raquel Adria Mangitano. He looks at the card and realizes it's a novella he read the day he had a drink at work. He remembers it's a character from the book. He punches himself in the face, but it doesn't help him wake up. Now he finally realizes that this is not a dream, and he has really become a character from Rakiri's novel. He realizes that his mountains of debt and interest are now gone, and now he can finally live a little without the dreaded debt. He jumps up thinking that he is now free, but his body fails and he falls on the bed. Rackle realizes that something is wrong with his body, and he realizes that his body is much weaker than that of a 40-year-old man. He recalls that Rackle is the Crown Prince, a minor character who only appears for a short time. He was bedridden since childhood, and then at age 22 he died. The character asks the clerk how old he is, to which the clerk replies that he is now 21. The prince is thinking about how he really only had 1 year to live. He got the best medical care in this world, but it never helped him. He still died in the first half of the story because he couldn't beat his disease. He realizes that there is only one answer now. He asks the clerk to bring him needles, no matter what size. He asks to bring as many as he can. He decides to protect his body. He sits in a meditation posture and tries to feel the pulse. He lists 10 kinds of pulse: the intermittent pulse with skips, the pulse of a boiling cauldron, the point of Yuji, the flickering stone pulse, the pulse of an unraveled rope, the pulse of a leaky roof, the pulse of a floating shrimp, and the pulse of a pecking sparrow. They're all known as the 10 weird pulses. If there are symptoms of any of them, it means he has wounds and is probably sick right now. The doctor brings him the needles and he thanks him. He looks at the needles and realizes it's like he's in a club. He takes one needle and heats it with a candle. The doctor asks what he's going to do with those needles, to which the hero replies that he's going to poke his body a little. The doctor storms in on him and pulls his leg. He asks him to stop hurting himself and asks him to calm down, saying that he is a prince and should inherit the throne of the empire. But the hero pushes him away, saying he has a good reason. If nothing happens to him after he stabs his body, he wants the doctor to start trusting him. The hero says that if he insists, he'll believe him. The hero undresses and lies down on the bed. He realizes that if he wants to breathe normally, before doing anything further, he should start with 20 medians to do so. After all, it has the most to do with the lungs. This point, the pulmonary median of the arm, Tane. He's poking at different points, such as the first lung, the cloud gate point, the upper gathering points of the hand. He reads that his body is responding positively to the acupuncture skills and the function of his internal organs has been restored. His lungs are dancing a dance, for they have begun to work again. The hero looks through his system windows, but the doctor looking at him doesn't understand. He must be going crazy, and he is crazy. The hero tells the doctor that he is not insane and that he is probably exaggerating. He decides to stick more needles in. The system gives him the good news that he is getting better and his gravity is gone. The needles begin to prick, and the doctor begins to pray for the man to regain his senses and regain his sanity. The hero looks at him with a strange face, not understanding what he wants. He decides to just finish his business. He uses different points to inject himself and is healed. The system tells him again that his circulatory system is better and that it's like his lungs are being massaged in a special chair. They don't give him health points like last time, but by poking at different points. The system finally tells him that the acupuncture treatment on the median of his left lung was successful. And finally, his lungs are doing the tap dance. Literally. They start dancing, and the hero feels it. He just can't sleep. The system alerts him that the organ responsible for defecating is synchronizing with his lungs and starts tap dancing. His colon is perfectly in rhythm, displaying an impressive wave motion. Finally, the hero accumulates 600 XP points, and he is prompted to open the skill list. He realizes that the skills here are like in a game where there's a sword and aura, or when he shoots fire from a staff. Are there really classic abilities here that are needed in the fantasy genre? He agrees and opens the list, to which he sees strange skills that clearly specialize in medicine. He realizes that these are skills he used on the job in a past life. The beginning of every treatment is a diagnosis, and only an accurate diagnosis can lead to the right treatment and the right drugs. He chooses number 1, pulse reading, an unlocked skill, and pays 500 XP for it. He scans his pulse, and the system gives him some very bad news, giving him a grade of F, and general opinion, SS rank trash, and gives him a life expectancy of 3 months and 1 day. And in a way, he didn't expect it. He realizes that if he inserts the needles in a clockwise direction and twirls them using the ossification and weakening method, he will exhale while he pulls out the needles using the respiratory augmentation and stun method. He sticks the needles in and the system gives him a notification that his life has been increased by 1 day. He decides to do the same for the other side, but he's bleeding. Apparently, he injured himself with that needle. He realizes that based on his current condition, he only needs to resort to this once every 3 days. In a nutshell, the body has low HP right now, and the message he just saw confirms the effectiveness of his methods, but it is the weakness of the body that is the problem. If he does it once every 3 days, he will have a 1-month increase in life expectancy. This is not enough, and he needs a more effective method. He realizes that the most effective would be to eat something, so he decides to ask for potions. He calls out decoctions, and the doctor asks him if he really wants him to bring them. The hero says he has such a request, and the one asks for an effective herb under the name of poisonous ingredients, aconite root. The doctor says it's not in the main palace, but they keep it anyway, since it's the residence of the crown prince. The prince asks for this root to be brought to him, and the doctor asks why he needs it, to which the latter declares that he will eat the poison root and asks him to bring it now. The latter pleads with him in tears not to eat it, but the prince declares that it is part of his cure and for him to stop whining and bring it here. The hero realizes that he can't make his way by force, so the prince tries to explain to the doctor what he knows about the root being poisonous. He says there are 2 kinds of root. He wants to eat the smaller one, which is known as dodder root. The active ingredient in the root can stop the heart, the doctor declares, to which the hero remarks that this is true, but he knows how he can neutralize the poison. In other words, he can make a cure out of it. Turn a poisonous plant into a medicine. It's called detoxification, the hero declares. After detoxification, the toxic properties of the root can become beneficial. The hero asks if he has convinced him, to which the man replies that no, he has never heard of such a thing and doesn't know where this information came from or if it can be believed. However, he wants to help improve his health, and so he will bring him this root. The doctor recalls that His Highness' body is rapidly weakening, and the fact that they're already desperate, as no treatment method has worked on him, and he decides to try detoxing instead. After the detox is over, he eats it first to make sure it's safe. The hero, meanwhile, has already gotten his root and tries to detox over it. The doctor picks up on the fact that there is a strange odor coming from the decoction. The hero asks if the doctor doesn't believe it is still safe, but the doctor is still afraid that the prince will be poisoned and asks him to come to his senses. The hero suggests that he try it first, to which the doctor states that it is a great idea. In the novel, Garden was very loyal. He was not originally a family doctor. Roughly speaking, he started out as the assistant family doctor, but even the doctors who were confident at first eventually left the prince's service, and at the end only Garden was left with Rackle. That's the kind of man he is. But in the end he was blamed for the death and execution of the prince. The hero realizes that he is sincere and he deserves a good life for his loyalty, but he won't share such delights even with him. He, having finally prepared the potion, looks at it, licking his lips. The doctor is ready to drink it, but the prince says he understands his haste, but he needs to wait. He needs to cool down first. The doctor asks how the hero got such knowledge of medicine. The hero thinks that if he gets in trouble if he doesn't realize that it's not Raquel in front of him. In that case, the hero says that he knows it from there, that the magician comes to him in his dreams every night and tells him how to heal. The doctor, surprisingly, believes him with a strange face, but the hero can't believe it, that the doctor believes such nonsense. The doctor is suspicious of this medicine and thinks it's too suspicious. Rackle stretches out his hands and is already preparing to drink it. And drinking every last drop, he licks his lips. He is haunted by the feeling that something big is coming. And the system responds to him that he has drunk a perfectly prepared decoction of ephedra, Ocantaveus aroma. The system also tells him that the daughter root has taken away the cold and pain from within, boosting his metabolism. His Astrakhan core energy has awakened. The system explains that this technique was created by the legendary master and knight known as Xavier Astrakhan and the aristocrat he served, Lloyd Frontera. This technique is only passed down to the most powerful heirs of the Maginotto Empire. It is a powerful technique, a symbol of the imperial family. And since the body belongs to the prince, this technique is available to him. A new skill is revealed to him, and he explains that this skill processes or increases the mana absorbed by the circle circulating mana around the heart. The hero feels as if a slippery spine is spinning around his heart, and what feels like life energy spreading throughout his body after each breath. He finally feels what mana feels like, but suddenly he grabs his heart, feeling as if something is about to burst. The doctor is already looking at him in fear, and the system tells him that the mana circle is putting too much pressure on his heart, and that the balance of heart growth and mana circle is out of balance. He runs the risk of cardiac arrest. The hero realizes that it is likely that the size of his heart does not fit the size of the mana circle. After all, Raquel has been sick since he was a child, and the fact that he hasn't had time to train his mana circle. And now that circle is squeezing his heart, like a ring that doesn't fit. In that case, the hero decides there is one way out, since he can't reduce the size of his heart, so he'll increase the size of the circle. Raquel moved into his subconscious, as if moving inward into his body at the same time. He moves to his heart and creates threads of mana and pulls the circle to make it enlarge. He also makes it spin furiously, but feels like he might pass out. He thinks back to the pain he felt in Korea and the fact that his clinic was supposedly infected with the coronavirus. He lost all his patients and even started going bald due to the stress. Added to this were the rent, loans, and rising interest rates. He even downgraded his house to pay it off. He procrastinates and says to underestimate the doctor, then dramatically unwinds the ring, saying that he is the business owner from Korea. Manu's ring enlarges and his heart is successfully released, and immediately he is already met by the doctor. And the system says that thanks to the positive stimulation, his heart is back to full strength. Raquel collapses abruptly afterward. The doctor doesn't realize if he's alright and approaches him, asking. Meanwhile, in his body, his heart arrives for the party and his lungs taunt him, and he greets them, saying they must be waiting by now. Raquel apologizes to his lungs for having such a shabby body, and the system informs him that the balance of heart growth and mana circle has come back to normal, and that he is the first person in history to get a magic circle slot. The hero realizes that a slot is like a space in his inventory. The doctor beckons him over, and he stands up abruptly, asking what the man wanted. And the doctor realizes that he is now full of life. He asks what it was then because the doctor thought he was in a lot of pain. He asks if it was a side effect of the medicine. The hero replies that he just choked on it and the fact that it was stuck in there. The doctor says that it looked like he was in danger, and the fact that it looked like that is what he thought he should drink first. Raquel asks if he really wants to drink the poison that badly. He will give him a chance next time. He says that if he doesn't want it, let him clean up and he will go rest, after which he thanks him. The doctor gets even more worried because he went to rest. He's probably been poisoned again, isn't he? But Raquel now realized that he might have gotten his hands on something incredible. A mana slot is a technique that stores materials mixed with mana, and there are 10 liters in each slot. They can be accumulated by absorbing them, so he can replenish a slot if he consumes something. He thinks about what he can try to eat, and realizes that water is perfect for such experiments. He takes a special container that clearly has 2 liters in it, and he remembers the average lethal dosage. It's a term used in determining the degree of poisonousness of a substance. It's the amount of a substance that can kill 50% of the test subjects. Simply put, the chance of dying is 50%. And if it doesn't die, it will cause a lot of pain or become common. At 60 kilograms, the average lethal dose is 5.5 liters of water, but with his weight, it's about 3.9 liters. He lifts this container and it feels very heavy to him because his body is very weak. He starts to drink all of it in one gulp, and he wants to set aside the water he is about to drink. He sees a notification from the system that everything is accumulating, and the hero doesn't even feel like he's drunk. He drinks 4 more containers and still doesn't feel anything. He has 0.1 liter of water left, and he realizes he's just like a camel, he can drink any amount of water once. The hero thinks about what he will do if he wants to try some decoction. He will die immediately if he tries to release 9.9 liters of water. He thinks about it and realizes that he is using the core technique. He now specializes in absorbing, amplifying, and releasing mana. He releases it directly from his body, using the amplification technique to release it. He creates a semblance of a Rosingen out of water, and now he needs to place it in a jug. He shoots the jug and it simply shatters. Apparently, the hero created magic directly from what he drank. He doesn't realize what it was, and he doesn't understand why it happened. He had planned to pour a little bit at a time, just like from the tap, but the mana turned into a water cannon. The guards are already running and all guns blazing, shouting that a loud sound came from the prince's bedroom. They rush in, and immediately the doctor starts yelling about being very worried. But Raquel says he's fine and that it's not like that. He's thinking about how he can get away with it this time. He says that he broke the jug on the table when he got angry, which is why it made a loud noise. He realizes they probably don't believe it. It even sounded stupid, but the guards understand. Is he injured after breaking the jug? And the hero can't even believe they believe this nonsense. The guards ask Garden's doctor to take him to the second bedroom. Raquel thinks his excuse was rather suspicious, but it worked. Now the doctor is carrying our hero on his back. He thinks about the fact that they probably believed it because he is the crown prince. The doctor finally brings him to the second bedroom and is already all tired standing in front of him, asking him to rest. Raquel is half full of the doctor and tells him to rest as well, then looks at his hand and begins to think about the fact that the circles of his mana and the median around his heart all rushed through his hand with amplification and release, and the result was a burst that was filled with energy. He should get some sleep before he caused more trouble for himself. Meanwhile, we see that the doctor has appeared before the king. He tells the king that Prince Raquel tried to harm himself with needles and poison. The king is very angry and is ready to deal with him. After Raquel has rested, he immediately begins to prepare a potion for himself. He finishes making 10 liters of the special potion. He asks Gardine to leave the room. He thinks about how he will faint if the doctor sees him drinking it all at once. He says it won't be long and he'll need to do some things while he's alone. The doctor looks at him disdainfully and says he will drink the decoction again, asking if he wasn't in a lot of pain last time. But the prince explains that he just choked on it. The doctor shares that he is very worried about him as they have prepared a lot of decoction this time. And the prince says that he will drink just a little bit for the experiment as he doesn't want to throw it away entirely since the doctor has worked so hard. The doctor will feel over his head, as if modestly. And now the prince finally reassures him. He says he won't even be able to drink it all. The doctor says only fools would do such a thing. And they both laugh at the situation. The prince then kicks the doctor out, slamming the door. After heading to the potion, picking it up and drinking it all in a gulp, he says it went down well. He sets out to experiment. He decides to release everything little by little. Gradually in the course of his life, he releases some amount of decoction. Usually it's 0.1 liters. The system keeps telling him the good news that his organs are ecstatic and he is getting HP in him. He decides he needs to increase his longevity. The release keeps going on, and he gets XP points for it all. The events are transferred to Raquel's body, and the heart asks what the intestine is for their lunch today, and he again tells him that it is the decoction that the master drank. Every day he asks, he hopes there will be something else, but the man says that they will always have the decoction for lunch and dinner, and every day they will eat only with it. The system, meanwhile, reports that his internal organs are fed up with the ephedra decoction. He thinks about how it would be better if the organs drank what they were given. Constantly releasing, looks at the system's notifications. His life expectancy has increased by 50 days. It finally worked. He jumps up dramatically, delighted at the news. The maid even nearly falls over from it, and the prince apologizes for startling her. The maid abruptly apologizes for breaking the mug. The prince wonders if she hurt herself, and the maid says it won't happen again and asks him not to whip her again like last time. The prince asks if he's ever done that before. She tells him he hasn't, but he gave the order, and the hero realizes that apparently the prince was quite the tyrant. He declares with a smile on his face, but a bit broken, that she should clean up and go. The maid cheerfully thanks him and leaves. He thinks about how the look on her face was just something with something. The prince tells him that his memory has been a bit of a blur lately and asks him to tell him what kind of person he is towards him and the servants. The doctor immediately prepares to lie with a smile, but the man says that if he flatters, the prince will drink all the poison before his eyes. The doctor is horrified and says there's nothing he can do then, and begins to tell the truth. That he usually just beat everyone for some misdemeanor, then with a whip, then on the hands, then with the hands themselves. The protagonist doesn't understand why Raquel was doing that. And he recalls the situation when the servants believed in that ridiculous excuse, because he was crazy from the beginning. The prince asks Sir Garden why he is not afraid of him, since he is the closest to him, so he is the one who has suffered the most. The doctor says he trusts him more than he trusts anyone. He says he knows what he's really like. We are transported back to an old memory, as a still young doctor was out in the rain near the castle he served in. He saw Raquel under a tree carefully sheltering a bird from a raindrop. The doctor looked at him with a smile, and now he told him that it was because he had cured his illness that he had decided to bring back the real him, and lately his faith had justified himself. Raquel with a smile finally thanks him. Raquel asks if he likes the way he is changing, so he decides to give the doctor the reward of eating one sweet of any kind. Rackle thinks about the fact that he now swears on Rackle's name that he will not allow him to be executed for dying. He decides to firmly survive in this world, but then a clerk bursts in on him. He beckons him over and says what the king himself has summoned him to say. Well, that's the end of part 1. If you want to see part 2 as soon as possible, write in the comments the secret word, doctor. And also be sure to check out these videos that came up on your screen. I worked really hard on them too, and it's important to me that you appreciate them. That's all for now. See you later and bye bye.